So, saw the movie,
Yeah.
and yes, of course, I loved it. One of my favorite parts, I think maybe the part I took the most with me was the relationship between you and Daphne.
Yeah.
And I just want to know how you guys worked on that, like that slow build of communication throughout the movie. I thought that was like so interesting.
You know, she's an extraordinary girl. And when Jim Mangold came up with this idea, I'd floated the idea of Patrick Stewart's character not being well, suffering some kind of dementia, and what that day-to-day would be like. And Jim came up with this idea of X-23 and Laura, and I was like, well, I love the symmetry of that family. It's sort of dysfunctional family, really.
Yeah.
That Little Miss Sunshine element of it.
Yeah, that's
But
what
I was
thought
like, how
too.
do you cast that? You know, she's in the entire movie. She barely speaks. And there's not a lot of characters. So it's and there's nothing cute about this film. This is not a cute father-daughter kind of
not at all.
family film. So the moment this girl's test came in, I was just blown away. And then when I met her, I'm like, she's an amazing actress, because she's just a very normal, happy-go-lucky kid.
Yeah, you wouldn't tell from that. Just she has like that cold stare sometimes, and just like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, she's like intimidating. She's like a little girl. It's like kind of weird dynamic.
She's just she's a great actor, and she loves it. She takes it very seriously, and she's very, very professional. I mean, it's not her first film, I think. She's in some TV, but for someone so inexperienced and so young, I was completely blown away.
Yeah. Okay. So now that you've said a lot of times that you're done, this is your final movie.
Yeah.
In the future, are there any future Wolverine storylines you'd like to see, like other people take the mantle of?
No, man,
Or did you feel you've done them all?
No, I haven't done them all, but maybe I've done enough. For me, until we came up with the idea for this, I wasn't even sure I was going to do this. Because I was sort of at that point where I have too much respect for the character and for the fans to just do another one for the hell of it. But I somehow, the moment I went, I think this is the last one, it really opened up for me the possibilities, and I was willing to walk away from it if the studio were not into it. But thankfully for me, and amazingly, Emma Watts, Steve Aspel, who I first told my idea to, they were like, let's go. And, you know, it was a big risk, but it kind of felt right. The first X-Men was a big risk too. People forget that. There was no real comic book genre at the time.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Bryan Singer had done Usual Suspects, but had never done a studio movie, you know?
Yeah, I just thought that you took some big risks, like throughout the strong choices, I should say.
Yeah.
Like especially towards the end, I was like,
Yeah.
oh wow, they went for it, and that's
Yeah.
really awesome. Lastly, just how do you feel about someone else taking the mantle? Like, would you approach it, or like just like as any other fan, or would you like want to like see, like, oh, would you like want to be like behind the scenes maybe, just like see it as like.
I definitely wouldn't be behind the scenes. No, I definitely, I think it's an iconic character. It was around 40 years before I played him in the film.
Yeah.
You know, I feel, I suppose on some level, a little bit of ownership. It's certainly very important to me, and I feel very connected to the fans who I speak to, if not every day, every other day of my life, because they,
Yeah.
you know, you're one. They're
Yes.
very vocal, and I've heard good and bad over the years, and this to me is I suppose, my love letter to the fans, because I feel everything I've come to know about this character, I feel is in this movie. And this is the most personal for me, and I take the fans' passion very seriously. And I really wanted to do a film for them. Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, we haven't seen the real Wolverine yet.
Yes.
For me, I think this is the real Wolverine.
So Boyd, you are now a X-Men villain. So what is that like? What does that feel like for you, taking on that mantle and having that in your resume?
It's a good thing to be in the pocket. No, it's really it's overly flattering to be a part of a gang that's been in this world for a long time. I mean, I think Hugh's is basically responsible for setting up this whole burst of a new demographic. You know, a lot of these films are responsible because of him, I think. And so to be able to play with someone like that is, you know, it's a 15-year-old dream for me.
So this is Donald Pierce's I mean, he's not a nice guy.
Okay.
So
Take that. It's offensive. But yeah.
well, when you're approaching a character like this, who is definitely he's a dedicated guy for sure.
Yep.
What is that like for you? What is your approach when you're like, okay, how do I bring this guy, to the screen, and what do I want to leave? What do you want to leave audiences with your version of Pierce?
Well, that's a really good question. I like to work, and I think for an actor to go to work every day is actually a really rare thing. So I don't take anything for granted, and so having the responsibility to go out and to make a story that's basically a character who's coming in between two other characters that is relatable. It's a father and daughter story, so I'm coming in between that. So I hope if anyone can take away is the value of that, and I think everyone can relate to that, and maybe I don't know, maybe strengthen a relationship that they have in their own life, because you're seeing. I think it's nothing wrong to play the bad guy because you're showing people what not to do.
Right.
That's wrong. That's I think in everyone's heart of hearts knows just truth and purity.
What's it like? I mean, obviously working with Hugh Jackman has got to be pretty intense. I mean, what's your takeaway from that whole experience, just working with him?
He sets an example, and I know he's quoted as the nicest guy in Hollywood. Yes, he's nice, but he's a terrific professional. I mean, if he's not busting his ass, then it just is a trickle-down effect. And so, I'm about to go off and, do a similar thing to him, to what he's done in Predator, which what I'm doing in Predator. It's a lot of work, and it's a stamina game, and you have to be physically sharp, because this is an instrument, however pretentious that may sound, but it's true. It's the only thing I have to work with. That's my tools. So, he is clean, fresh, intelligent.
So you, just as you just said, I mean, you're kind of moving into this big franchise territory now with Predator. What is it like for you taking on that kind of mantle, going from this to that?
Gimme. I want it. I want the responsibility. I'm doing this for a living, and I just don't, I want to swing for the fences or either strike out, because I don't want to do anything half-assed.
So James, we saw quite a bit of Logan yesterday, and it's amazing.
Well, thank you.
So I think my sentiments and a lot of others that were there that saw it felt like this is the Wolverine movie we've kind of been waiting to see for the last 15 or so years. So kudos.
Well, thank you.
I just have to say it's
well, in a way,
really,
it's
really
the
cool.
one I've been wanting to make. So the feeling is similar in the sense that, when I worked on the last one, there's a kind of learning curve entering that world, and there was a lot I really love about the movie. There was aspects of the character free from the Japanese plot that I really thought would be interesting to explore,
Right.
and that audiences were hungry for.
So it's kind of hard not to, as from comic book perspective, it's hard not to equate this to Old Man Logan in many respects. How much of that was an influence in what you guys crafted?
I think it was a powerful influence on not only just in the back of our minds. It wasn't something we could directly adapt,
Right.
But it was something that really led me, and I even think gave me permission in a way to take the character to a kind of more fragile place and a different place, and feel like we weren't, in a sense, betraying some of the canon because that had already happened in the comic books. But it was a very interesting opportunity it afforded us to kind of reimagine Logan, push things ahead of any existing timelines, and have a chance to kind of start fresh. And essentially, the whole goal is to make an adult movie.
Right.
At core, the goal was to just make a film that isn't serving so many masters. I think so many of these tentpole films, partly as a function of how much they cost, are trying to be great for 7-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and 40-year-olds. And there's a little of the variety show in the sense that the tone is shifting all the time from silly to serious to somber to... And I think more than anything, I wanted to make a film that just maybe stood out in the sense that it was just a grown-up movie that just happened to be about superhero characters.
And also now you have an R rating, which is, again, allows you more of that freedom.
I only can't affirm or comment on the rating because It's about the MPA hasn't rated the movie yet.
Oh,
so
okay.
so you can make any observations you want. But
Well, based on what we've seen, it definitely feels like a more hard R kind of thing. It'd be difficult to get a PG-13 with that.
I'm not sidestepping your question at all. I can't say it because
Gotcha.
they haven't decided it. Meaning not the studio, the ratings board.
But in
I
terms
would
of,
agree with your observations.
in terms of like what we've seen though, like
And I wouldn't worry about it. Meaning,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we're all pretty rallied around the idea of making an adult movie. That's just the way I'm going to box it for now.
right. I mean, when what we've seen is like, I mean, this is again, there's so many oohs and ahs, like, oh my God, look at that, you know, it more than anything, it's like finally, you know.
Yes,
So it's like
absolutely. Well, you know, I can't tell you how many times people have sent me even that clip from the video game from about 8 years ago, with him, you know, stabbing people through walls, and it's a very winning argument. And it's something you can't do without a studio being willing to cross a line and make something that risks getting an R.
Right.
And but beyond that, it's also about tone, and it's about, you know, you can't quite have it all. The wisecracks, the cigar, the cute repartee, the violence. You have to kind of pick one. And I think we, if anything, went for just a kind of very adult. Knowing this was Hugh's last time out, we decided to go, you know, as much of a model as anything else. You know, movies like The Wrestler were an example of the kind of film I kept thinking, that's going to be really interesting. And we, you know, when we gave the script to the studio, we were clear that we wanted to make something that was going to, in a way, limit the audience a little more. And so they didn't give us as much to work with financially as we've had as other films like this have, but we had a lot of freedom. And I think that one of my feelings were that these movies, no matter how much money has been thrown at them lately, these kinds of movies, they're not getting better for the amount of cash being thrown at them. And I think we're getting kind of numb to the spectacle that is getting hurled at us. I mean, you know, we can do most of that stuff ourselves on an Xbox now. And so in many ways, that spectacle, I find myself thinking about other things in movies a lot as the noise is pounding me and those images are flying by me, that I'm not emotionally engaged in the movie, and that was our number one goal.
my last question, why is it now the time to introduce X-23 into this film, or Laura, as she's known?
Well, it was really, to me, the idea of making a character film and a family film. The idea that struck me while we were working on the Wolverine was trying to make a film. There are many different influences: westerns, Paper Moon, Little Miss Sunshine. Making an adult film, a 70s style adult film starring this character, and you're asking why Laura? And the answer to me is that I was interested in making a movie about fathers and sons in the sense of Charles and Logan, and fathers and daughters in the sense of Logan and Laura. And for me, the biggest issue at play wasn't just it's about fathers and daughters, but about love and what is it, and can you reach across these boundaries, and how so many of us are caring for aging parents at this point in our lives, and that really interesting questions about our lives being asked through the behaviors and feelings of these superheroes, as opposed to questions we're never faced with, which is how are we going to defeat this galactic supervillain, you know? And yet I think there's something to be wrung out of that rag that's really interesting and we haven't seen before. And that's what we're all looking for, is something new, you know, some new angle on life and on these characters we adore.